Welcome or welcome back to Teen TV Deep Dive. Here on this channel, we talk about all things Teen TV. Today, we're going to be talking about Season 3 of The Summer I Turned Pretty. So if you haven't watched our videos on Season 1 and Season 2, check them out there in the description box down below. Also, if you haven't seen all of Season 3, I recommend you do that, as we're going to be talking about details and lots of spoilers, as well as the series finale throughout this video. So check that out first, then come back. The show also goes over a longer time span than normal, so I'm going to be breaking it up chunk by chunk as we see throughout the episodes. Season 3 picks up where Belly is about to enter her junior year of college. She ended up going to choose Finch, whereas where Jeremiah goes, they're in a happy, committed relationship. Belly doesn't play volleyball anymore due to a knee injury, but now she majors in sports psychology, so she's very happy with that. We see that Steven and Taylor are still kind of messing around a little bit. They're currently in a situationship, but Steven has his own girlfriend and Taylor has her own boyfriend, but they still cheat on their partners with each other, I guess. Which I don't like how that was written off in the story, especially after things that we'll talk about today. It was kind of weird how Steven and Taylor's disloyalty in their relationships was written off, but it becomes such a big deal later on in the story. Overall, I feel like Belly has just lost herself in her relationship with Jeremiah. At this point, they've been together for 4 years. She goes to the same college as him, but we don't really see her be an independent character during the college episodes. I feel like every decision that she makes, or all of her personality now, is just to appease Jeremiah and to be that perfect, like, frat bro girlfriend, but she's not actually being her own standalone character. Even though she's the main character, it just doesn't feel like it's her story at this point in time. And I know when she's with one brother, she often still has feelings for the other and she misses them. But at this point in time, I don't feel like Belly has serious feelings for Conrad during her relationship with Jeremiah. Like I said, Jeremiah is a frat bro, but he's technically not a bad one. Yeah, he's loud and him and his friends party a lot, but that's pretty much the only damage that they do. But I do feel like in season 3, Jeremiah is a man child at this point. We've seen so much growth happening from season 1 to season 2, like all of that initiative he took trying to get everyone back together, get Conrad back on track, and all those types of things. It was really showing like he's growing up, he's becoming a man, and just lots of great qualities. But I feel like all of that growth that he went through in season 2 is kind of being undone throughout season 3. So that made me look at the storyline a little bit sideways. I wasn't enjoying that aspect of it as much. Just like I said, season 3 really stifled all of the growth that I saw building. So in the college episodes, I'm not the happiest with Jeremiah. We've even seen that he is supposed to be getting ready to graduate college, but because he wasn't on top of his things, like he failed a couple of classes or something like that, that he's now going to be a super senior and he won't be able to graduate on time, which is something that you see Jeremiah is pretty disappointed about, as well as the people around him. As for Conrad, I'm very happy with the growth that I'm seeing. He's in therapy. He started a new life in California. He's a med school student ready to become a doctor at Stanford. And he's overall just distanced himself from the family, which I think is best, especially with the high expectations that their dad projects onto them, but also having to take on the parent role to Jeremiah, especially after Susanna passed, is what's best. Then we have his ex Belly. Being in California really was the move, I feel like, for Conrad. But then winter break happens. Belly ends up going to cousins, and Conrad is there. They hang out, but they keep it a secret. And then later on, we see over spring break, Belly and Jeremiah get into this very serious fight where they're basically broken up. And so Jared schedules this impromptu trip to Cabo with his frat and sister sorority, and he quote unquote cheats on Belly. And I say this because the fight was super serious and Belly voiced that they broke up. And so Jeremiah took that as, wow, this relationship is really over. So he moved as a single guy. And then we see that in Belly's mind, she did say that they were broken up, but she had it in her mind that they were going to make up somehow. And it was just a fight, but they were going to smooth things out. And so with that, Jer goes cheats on a girl in the sorority, and then she finds out later at this party they fight, break up again, and they go a long time without talking. But Jeremiah ends up proposing to Belly, and she says yes. So now that brings us to a wedding this summer in Cousins. Now for Summer, we see that Belly is struggling with her and Laurel having a strained relationship. After Belly and Jared broke the news to Laurel about their wedding, Laurel doesn't support it. She feels like they're too young, and she says that she won't have anything to do with this. And I see that now Belly feels really lost in life. I feel like now she's finally realized how much time and energy she was putting into her relationship and not into other aspects of life. And I really feel like Belly spent a lot of her formative years, especially to become an independent adult, she spent in a relationship that I feel like a large part of it was formed because of a trauma bond. We see that Jeremiah and Belly's relationship is really cemented after everyone is reunited after Susanna passed. And so I feel like her relationship with Jeremiah was just kind of a sense of normalcy and comfort that she felt. But she also did like Jeremiah to a degree. I do definitely think that. But we see that Belly is just at a loss for life. Now, over the summer, her and Jeremiah aren't welcome at Laurel's home anymore, so she's staying at the Cousins Beach house. I'm not really sure why Conrad is there, but now Belly and Conrad start to spend more time together, and her crush on him kind of comes back. Jeremiah, of course, ends up getting suspicious of this. He ends up one night coming home where after Belly and Conrad spent a whole bunch of time that day together, they were sitting down eating Conrad's basic grilled chicken that he makes all the time. And the drinks were flowing, conversation was flowing. Jeremiah definitely walked in on a vibe happening. So I don't think he's wrong for his suspicions. But we see this summer Jeremiah just continuously makes a lot of bad financial decisions, and it's making him seem really unreliable. The next step after Belly and Jeremiah decide that they're going to get married, they want to move in together and find a place to live. But with a lot of it, they're getting declined for the apartments because Jeremiah has a bad credit score. And Belly was like, how can that happen? You still use your dad's credit cards. But Jeremiah has been making poor decisions. And so it's making it really hard for him to provide a life for him and Belly to move forward with. Overall, with this whole wedding, it just seems like Jeremiah is worried about the wrong things. He almost turns into a bridezilla, basically. He's really stressed about the cake. He has this perfect cake flavor profile that he has ingrained in his mind that he isn't willing to sacrifice. He even complains about the location of the wedding, not wanting it at the beach house, and just a whole bunch of other things. But I feel like what Jeremiah should have been worried about is working on rebuilding his trust and relationship with Belly, but instead he's trying to use material things, I feel like, to patch up their weak point in their relationship. As for Conrad, I feel like he just feels anxious around everyone. He definitely still likes Belly, but he's trying to keep his distance, but it's pretty hard, especially since they're in the house together. But one thing I do like about Conrad in this section of the show is that he ends up talking Laurel into coming to Belly's wedding shower and wedding. And him and Laurel, they have a sit down, and Connor ends up telling Laurel about how Belly's been super down in the dumps without her because Conrad seen Belly crying at their home because she missed her mom. And so Laurel feels really bad, and they end up reuniting, and it's a super sweet moment. Now it's the night before the bachelor and bachelorette parties. They're all about to go out throughout the town and do like a whole bar crawl thing. And we see that Belly, she's dancing at one of the bars, and it's a pretty iconic moment where We Can't Be Friends by Ariana Grande starts playing. And as Belly is dancing, it starts flashing moments between her and Conrad, and she just has some doubt and some guilt about marrying Jeremiah to the point where it overwhelms her to having a panic attack. And so when Taylor asks her what's wrong, Belly's like, I can't marry Jeremiah. I think I still like Conrad. And then we see over at another bar in town, Conrad is out with Jeremiah at his bachelorette party. They have their frat bros. And so Jeremiah and his friends slip up and accidentally talk about him cheating on technicality. And so Conrad finds out. He's so mad that he storms off and he sits at the beach. But earlier that night, Belly and Jeremiah had made plans that they were going to meet up at the beach after their nights out to just hang out one last time before they officially get married. Jer is trash, so he ends up falling asleep as soon as he got home. He forgot, but Conrad is still at the beach trying to clear his head, and Belly goes to meet who she thinks is Jer. While they're there, Conrad immediately tells Belly that Jeremiah cheated on her. She says that she knows and she took him back. And then he again tries to tell her that he's in love with her. And this time, I love this because Belly finally stood her ground. She thought it's what she wanted, and it kind of, in a way, validated her feelings of having this guilt about still having a little bit of feelings towards Conrad. And that's why she felt like she couldn't go through with the wedding with Jeremiah. But now that Conrad is telling her everything she wants, she tells him, no, we're not doing this again. She feels that every time that her and Jeremiah get to a good point in their relationship, or Belly gets into a good point in her life where she doesn't have feelings for Conrad, now all of a sudden he's there waiting with all these feelings that she's been begging for in return for all of this time. And so Conrad is super bummed. He starts crying. Belly keeps a strong face in front of him, but when she goes off, she starts crying too. The next day, Belly is spiraling. She doesn't know what to do. She's there at the wedding getting ready. After some time, Jared was late, but he's on time now. And he's trying to get ready for the wedding too. Conrad still, once again, visits Belly again, tries to plant those seeds of doubt in her mind about the wedding. And she tells him off again, and he decides not to go to the wedding at all. And then we see that Belly and Jeremiah have this conversation. They basically both are kind of on the same page of feeling like they aren't ready to get married today. Jeremiah is pretty fine with that, but Belly is saying like, no, there's no way at all that we can even continue a relationship. We have to be done for real, for real. And so with that, Jeremiah starts crying, Belly is crying, and the wedding gets called off. Now this is for the post-wedding section. We see Jeremiah being super down in the dumps after the wedding gets called off. He is sad, but he has Taylor and Steven on his side trying to help reconcile him. But we also see that with Steven and Taylor trying to navigate their relationship again, it's kind of difficult for Jeremiah to stomach right now, so it's making him upset. What I love about Jeremiah during this time, though, is that he still stood on business. He ends up showing up to Cousins. He stood on business with Conrad, telling him how he was messing up him and Belly's relationship, and he feels like the wedding being called off is Conrad's fault. And Conrad, playing the victim like always, he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Like, I'm it's my fault, Jerry. It's my fault." And he was like, "I don't even know. I wasn't trying to do anything. It wasn't intentional." And Jeremiah was like, "No, you know exactly what you did." And he disowned Conrad as his own brother. And then he ended up punching Conrad too. And I love that. Jeremiah, every time for Belly, he's 10 toes down. When it comes to standing on business with Conrad, Jeremiah holds Conrad accountable every time. And I love it. But as for Conrad, we see that he's very selfish. I feel like for trying to convince Belly to leave Jeremiah the day before the wedding. I do know that there's different trains of thought when it comes to who technically had Belly first. Is it Conrad because she had the crush on Conrad first? And as we hear all the different points of views that Conrad's feelings are mutual first, we could say that Conrad did have her first and they were the first to get into an official relationship. But I would say that Jeremiah was the first brother to make his romantic interest in Belly be known first and to also romantically pursue Belly first. So I don't know who you want to say had Belly first because Jeremiah and Belly did kiss before Conrad and Belly did. So I don't feel like Conrad really has a leg to stand on by saying that he had her first because he technically didn't. And overall, Conrad's over apologizing just was annoying at that point. He kind of has this savior complex of feeling like he's better than everyone. And so he lets Jeremiah let his anger out on him. And Conrad just low key kind of gets pick me because he's like, I'll be the bad guy. Because instead of taking Jeremiah's anger as valid feelings and Jeremiah feeling upset that Conrad is constantly interfering with this relationship that he's trying to build with Belly, he instead interprets it as Jeremiah being the younger brother, taking being a brat and having a temper tantrum, and Conrad is just being the older brother, the amazing big brother, and he's letting Jeremiah take it out on him. Overall, all of the positive attributes that I see in Conrad starting to develop in the earlier episodes of season 3, I feel like it all went downhill after the bachelor party and his character arc as a whole. Now we have Belly. She's, like I said, she after the wedding got called off, she booked a flight to Paris and she leaves. I think she finally finds herself. While the whole studying abroad through her college program doesn't work, Belly has to move a few things around. She ends up getting a job, finds a group of friends, place to live, and she does end up continuing college online, but not in the way that she started it. I think it was really needed actually seeing Belly become an independent person and having to fend for herself, because I think it was really needed seeing her work jobs and actually have to do things on her own, because I don't think it's talked about enough, but Belly does have youngest child syndrome, especially with her being the youngest out of her and Steven, but also at the beach house when it's all 4 kids, Belly is still the youngest. Everybody looks out for her and tries to protect her as much as they can, but I feel like that's made Belly a little bit spoiled to feeling like she can be at the center of a love triangle, in my opinion. So I think her having to go out there and get everything on her own was very needed for her character development. As Belly spends more time in Paris and out there on her own, she ends up forming a relationship with a guy named Benito. He's in her friend group. I think they have a lot of chemistry. I really enjoyed seeing their relationship. It was just super fun and carefree, and I love that. I think this is the real relationship that Belly needed, especially after all the things that were happening in her life just before. Now we have the next summer, where Belly is spending her first birthday unannounced in Paris, and we see that Conrad comes by to visit unannounced. He's been writing her letters to Paris. Belly reads them, but she hasn't written back, so Conrad decides to show up for himself once and for all. While he's there, he is trying to feel the temp because he sees some energy exchanging back and forth between Belly and Benito, but he's not really sure. We end up finding out that Belly and Benito had broke things off, and she broke things off with him. Realistically, I think it's because she still wasn't ready for a relationship, because all of the whole wedding shenanigans just happened a shy of a year ago. But I think it was included in the storyline to try and hint at she's still not over Conrad. So with that, you see some more of a spark that kind of rekindles between Belly and Conrad. But in the meanwhile, back at Cousins, we see Taylor and Steven are in a very happy relationship. They're even about to move in together, and they're kind of fighting because Denise and Steven's tech startup is gonna require them to move to San Francisco, but Steven hasn't really told Taylor that yet, so they fight over that, but then they ultimately make up and she's willing to move to California with him. And then as for Jeremiah, he's discovered his love for cooking and he becomes a chef and he's trying to make a name for himself. I love that for Jeremiah. We've seen little sneak peeks throughout him cooking throughout the earlier shows where it's like a small love has grown into something big, which I love to see. But then also we see that Jeremiah ends up moving in with Denise, Steven's coworker. It was also Jeremiah's coworker at one time. But they end up having this whole spark and vibe that just works really well together, especially after Jeremiah matured. I think that you could tell that he liked Denise because Jeremiah gets very attentive in relationships. I think after Belly, he's learned from his mistakes and he's even more attention to detail. And this relationship just works really well. I would really want to see that be further explored. But just this golden retriever black cat trope is two people that you don't think would work, but together they work so well. And I love seeing it on screen. But back to Paris, where Belly, Conrad, they're dancing out in the Paris streets, and Belly ultimately chooses Conrad after some tug and pull. They have a moment where they physically reconnected, but Belly's pushing him away. Conrad is still saying, I love you, like da 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 da. And Belly's like, well, I don't know if it's actually love. What if we just feel like we're supposed to love each other because of your mom? Because that's been Susanna's vision for such a long time. When she was alive, she really wanted Conrad and Belly to get married and be in a relationship when they were kids, when they grew up. And so Belly doesn't know if it's subconsciously them just trying to keep Susanna's dream alive or feel pressured to do so by their Susanna. And so with that, Conrad says no, everything that he loves about her is by choice, and he can change everything else about himself, but his love for her will always remain the same. And so Belly still pushes him away. He leaves, cries again, and Belly ends up changing her mind, and they're finally in a relationship. Now, these are some of my final thoughts on the verdict, but also just as all the characters on their own. Jeremiah is, of course, the more seasoned brother. He became the chef. He just has the humor, the flavor, even the songs throughout all the romantic moments throughout the series. Jeremiah always gets a R&B, a indie pop, like just a good song. And Conrad, he gets some bangers here and there, but just Jeremiah, he just has more flavor to him, more personality, and still my favorite as a standalone character at this point in the show. But I do think it's really weird, and it's not to slander Belly, but I do think that everyone is better off without Belly. Like in season 2, I really like Jeremiah. He was stepping up to the plate when he was trying to work for Belly's affection and feelings and stuff for her. He ate, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm Team Jeremiah. Like, y'all, I was in a chokehold, Team Jeremiah all day, every day. But then we see that when she's in a relationship with Jeremiah, like I said, he became a man child, very childish, and things like that. But then we see Conrad, he's maturing in therapy, actually working on his communication skills and coping skills, which I was like, okay, Conrad, I see improvement. I'm actually having positive thoughts about you as a character. But then he just became very desperate towards the end, and I didn't like that. And also, just in a real world scenario, one, the love triangle wouldn't have went on this long because they should have felt like cousins. And two, if this is a real world scenario, it is so creepy that Conrad is a 25-year-old man still hung up on a couple short month relationship in high school. That's very creepy. And to also show up to another country unannounced, extremely creepy. So without all the movie magic, like, oh, he's willing to go to the end of the earth about her, it's just odd to say the very least. But I've never been Team Conrad. You guys know, never have. But the beginning of season 3 had me willing to see the other point of view. And I was actually able to have those moments where I was actually like, hold on, I see the chemistry, I see the tension. And it was working out for the better. I do also understand why Belly and Jeremiah weren't a match. They both just have youngest child syndrome, and they're two fun loving people, and it just won't work. They're very high energy, and together, I don't think that they'll mature enough to be the adults that they need to be. But I do hope that one day, I know there's the Summer I Turned Pretty movie coming out. I hope that we can see their friendship make another reappearance because their friendship is cute. I also think that Benito and Belly have potential to be something great, but of course, he came too late in the series, so we couldn't see too much of that. I think Benito was like the perfect mix of every single love interest that Belly's ever had. I think he had the likability and sweetness of Kim Cameron, but also the wild side and kind of like the cheekiness of Jeremiah. But then he had the depth and the emotional intelligence of Conrad. So I feel like he's pretty perfect, but we all know how those things work out. I do also feel like Conrad and Belly really do balance each other out. Conrad is more chill, Belly is a little bit more high energy. I think it's in a way that pushes them both to be better versions of themselves, but it doesn't make anyone uncomfortable with how different they are, if that makes sense. Overall, I'm not jazzed about the ending. Like, I'm not rejoicing for joy that Belly chose Conrad, but I'm also understanding of it. I think throughout the whole show and even in the books, there's been this constant reiteration of the importance of first and first love and everything like that. And Belly having been that for Conrad, and just all of the movie references and things like that through Sabrina and Bye Bye Birdie, it makes sense that she chose Conrad. So I'm not too upset by that. If you made it to this point in the video, comment down below what are your thoughts about Belly choosing Conrad. I love to hear them. And I would also like if you could follow my other social medias at Teen TV Deep Dive Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads for more. Also, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.